to the Insomnicat Show with Nicolette and Brian. We'll get real deep with you, educating, inspiring, and solving problems with some of the most inspirational humans on the planet. Buckle up and come on the journey.
I'm excited. All right, guys, I'm Nicolette, and today Brian and I are here with Jackie Roby. She is the Chief Excellence Officer over at Inspire Journey Consulting, and she's going to talk to us today about travel and the impact that it has on our health and well-being. So Jackie, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate talking about this fun topic. We're excited.
Oh, me too. Thank you so much, Nicolette and Brian.
Can you kick us off? Tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey to Inspire Journey Consulting and this movement you're kind of creating here.
Absolutely. So I am based in Boston. I've been here 15 years, originally from New York. I have spent my career in travel and hospitality. I kind of fell into it and was in sales, spent an entire career in sales. I never thought I'd be a salesperson, but so it goes. But when you find something that you love, you want to talk about it all the time. So throughout my years in the industry, I worked for boutique hotels and luxury products, big brands at the very beginning, and then worked for the largest travel agency consortium in North America. So with that, I was able to oversee a luxury wellness program and train travel advisors as part of that and then market. And so I started to see this missing piece of the puzzle. And so from there, I said, okay, this is a space where I want to live and I want to do more, but it wasn't necessarily what I was assigned to do at my job. And I noticed just some of the beautiful modalities that were available through healing and wellness. And so because of that, I said, all right, it's time to go out on my own and take the leap of trust in myself and start this business.
That's always a scary point where you just go, okay, you know what? I'm going from here's my set income to where am I going to make money from tomorrow?
100% terrifying. And I'd spent so many years being like, no, that's not for me. I really like a steady paycheck. Money's good. Like money's still good, not going to lie, but
people don't like to say it, but it's pretty good.
Yeah.
I think there's such a different quality of what you feel about your work accomplishments when you're doing it for you versus doing it for others. I think it's just such a different experience.
Absolutely. It changes the motivation. I look sometimes at the hours that I work and I'll wake up in the middle of the night at some points. And if I can't get back to sleep, I'm like, all right, it just means that inspiration has hit me. And I'll get up and do something, right? And if I need to sleep later, I will. But it's all because it's something that I care about and I love.
That happens to me too in the middle of the night.
Yeah, I sit there. I text myself sometimes. Like I'll be like,
I do too. You do that too.
Because like text, I'll never miss a text. Like if I emailed myself or did something else, like I sit there and I text myself thoughts. I'm like, okay, I won't lose this one because I'll check my text later.
Brian.
And I'll be like, wait, is this a text from my future or past self?
That is so smart. I love that. I put it in a calendar appointment. Like, okay, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to do.
Well, it's funny. I know I'm totally digressing here, but it's funny you say that because at first I was like, no, it's fine. I'll remember it in the morning. And then you wake up and you're like, I had this great idea. What was it? I can't remember. So I didn't want to get out of bed. And that's when I started texting myself. And the next day I'd open, I'd be like, wow, I'm a genius at night. I really am. Like I could have never come up with this now.
Sleepy Nicolette is brilliant.
Right. As long as the like autocorrect doesn't kick in, and you're like, what the hell was I trying to say last night?
Yeah. Anyway, Jackie, introduce us to this concept of healing travel. What does this mean and where does it come from and how is it maybe misunderstood? Because even I was trying to really get my head around this concept.
Yeah. So healing travel, there's healing travel and wellness travel. So when we look at wellness travel, it is really focusing on the mind, body, and spirit. Now, oftentimes you're going to see people doing yoga retreats, right? You think of wellness that way. Maybe somebody's doing those detoxes or boot camps. Thanks to me that, at least on the starvation boot camp side, does not sound exciting for me, but it's so much more than that. But those are definitely elements that are involved. Oftentimes there's the chance of reconnecting with nature. So being in a beautiful setting outside, having walks in the forest, hiking, just being in that space to really connect there and get grounded. So dedicating that time. And when you come back from a wellness travel trip, you're invigorated. Oftentimes we go on vacation and, we all love it. We go to the pool, have cocktails. I love my cocktails. But then you come back and you're tired and you're dragging and, you just wish you had a vacation from your vacation so that you could then prep to go back. Where when you're traveling for wellness, you're already invigorated. You get on the plane and you're ready to go, like, succeed in life. So healing has elements of wellness travel. So it's going to have those elements, but then there's more to it because you are open and ready to do the work, to go deeper and support your own healing journey.
Okay. So where does this concept come from? Where did you what was the, what's the inspiration behind it?
Well, I would say it's something that's been around for quite some time, but not necessarily with a title around it.
Okay.
If you think of people traveling to India to learn about Ayurveda, right? Or going to Bali to learn yoga or spend time with a shaman in Mexico, all of these things.
Or do a walkabout in Australia.
Exactly. Anything you can do to really just to connect and learn and go a little bit deeper and take that. So what's happened in the travel industry is that there are properties that are dedicated to healing. And that's really extraordinary. And that, for me, as somebody who'd been in the industry for 17 years, prior to learning about it, it blew my mind that I hadn't heard of it after I'd been, traveling globally and working for brands all over the place. To not know that this existed, I had to share it with the world.
Now, I read that this market is,
it's
actually, hold on, Brian. The market is growing too, kind of faster than general tourism, correct? That is something that I read. Why is
100%. 100%. Wellness travel as a whole is growing significantly year over year. It's one of the fastest growing niches in travel. And actually, the wellness traveler spends 130 times more than the average leisure traveler. So that's kind of mind blowing. But when you think about it, I know that sounds really scary and expensive for somebody, but you also think about where you're putting your money. Right. And maybe those other things aren't tracked. So maybe if you're going off property and spending all your money on food and drinks and shopping, right? Instead, it's placing it elsewhere that's dedicated to your wellness.
Okay.
Now it's almost, now listening to hear you say that, it's almost like in my mind, there's almost like, and there's probably more, but there's almost like 3 types of travel, right? There's that really bizarre, weird travel, like you go to Disneyland and you just rush through
bizarre.
things.
That's a job. That's like,
that exactly.
Strenuous, grueling, being a parent travel.
Yes, exactly. So, but you're like dedicated to do all these things that are sort of preset for you when you feel like you must be mandated to do, right? Then you have this like we said, there's always those nice vacations where you're really doing nothing, not thinking about anything, having some drinks on the beach and just, that's it, right? But my favorite type of travel is, I think, what you're talking about, where, like when you go somewhere, like, me and my best friend hiked the Great Wall of China outside of Beijing, and you learned like a lot about yourself. You learned a lot about other things you didn't know, and you experienced the world in a different way, right? And it sort of opened your eyes to a lot of things as you're going through that hike, as you're doing, things like that. It sort of changes your perspective, and you heal and you learn that way. So that's really what you're talking about, those type of journeys or adventures or whatever you want to call them, correct? In the vacation or
absolutely. So there's those transformative experiences that you're talking about. And when you set an intention to be open to those things, that it changes you. And there's also healers along the way that can do more to even support that journey. So, for example, there's a brand that I discovered that I fell in love with called Healing Hotels of the World. And under that umbrella, there's about 100 different properties. And these are typically independent. So you've got these visionaries who have started this because they want to give their gifts of healing to the world.
Mhm.
In the States, very commonly known as Canyon Ranch in Tucson, Lenox, and now there's a property in California as well. And you'll see an entire different range of uh, medical practice actually on site, and different modalities within medicine, both Eastern and Western. Um, when my first trip there, I had EMDR for the first time, but then I also did a life mapping session, which was fascinating, in addition to the yoga classes and meditation class and all of that, while enjoying really healthy, delicious food that was available and all included so that I didn't have to think about it. I could just eat.
Well, I want to go back to one thing you said about, it's kind of been around, but we haven't had this term to define it. Because when I think about, going back to like connecting with nature, and so there have been times that I aim to feel very small, compared to something around me, right? So maybe that's, for people I know, it's been standing in the middle of the desert in Nevada on their 50th birthday. And, for others, it's kind of like standing on a mountain and looking down, or going to Iceland or whatever it is. And, I think that, is it very personal? I guess this is a question too. Could it be a very personal thing? And I ask this because there was a time where, I needed to, like, I needed that healing, right? Like something inside me was saying, I need something. And so I packed up my family and I went to Washington, DC, and I had never been there. It's crazy. All these kids go on trips. I had never been there. And so I impulsively went there just to feel like I was a part of something bigger than me. Right. And is that kind of what you're talking about when you're talking about that healing, feeling like you're a part of kind of whatever's going to get you to see things differently?
Absolutely. And I love that example because I think that was something that helped your spirit
Yes. Yes.
along that path. I had something really similar. I moved to Boston on my own 15 years ago, and I didn't recognize that I needed to be in a city where I didn't know anybody. There was no family here in order for me to actually start my own healing journey, and how cathartic that was, that I had a space to be myself in a new way and really face some of the demons that I wasn't able to look at before. So when I think about healing overall, there's an emotional depth to it. About 13, 14 years ago, I fell into a really deep depression, and it knocked me off my feet in a way that I had to actually call my mom from Colorado and ask her to help. And I didn't know what I needed, but I knew I couldn't do it on my own.
Mhm.
And, she lived with me for a month. I got medication in order. I had been in therapy for a bit. And then after that, years after that, I've spent time researching and learning how to minimize anxiety, how to avoid panic attacks, how to increase happiness, because happiness is part of it is a choice.
Mhm.
And it's little choices and decisions that we make every day.
Mhm.
I spent over a decade learning all of these things and consistently in therapy. I love therapy. Uh, and then when I experienced healing travel, what I realized was that so many of these lessons are available through travel, that somebody can help and guide you to put you on this path and support you, so kind of kickstart you so you can go home and say, okay, I can take all of this that I've learned and keep going to help release that pain and increase the joy.
Yeah. It's amazing how just those moments change you. Like Nicolette, you being in Washington, you moving to a city you didn't know anyone. And I'm gonna tell one of my favorite travel stories. We were talking about hiking in China. Me and my best friend, we were hiking the Great Wall in Beijing, and we were going up to the highest point on the Great Wall of China, the highest tower. And we started out really early in the morning, and we were literally the only English speakers on the Great Wall. And we got to the top, and there was a whole bunch of people just banging on the wall, yelling, screaming, because it was closed off, because parts of the Great Wall you can't go to and they're broken. And me being me, I'm just like, yeah, I'm going to run up, yell and scream, and start banging on the wall. And I start yelling, screaming, banging on the wall with everyone. Everyone stops. They just look at me. They start smiling and start cheering, giving me hugs. There's all these pictures of random people in China just hugging this crazy American that decided to run up and bang on the wall. So, but that's not the, and everyone was just like, just hugging, and it was a great experience, right? So we get down, and we had a translator with us because neither one of us spoke Chinese, but they didn't hike the mountain, the wall with us. And we were explaining what happened, and she goes, come over here. And she shows us these Kenjis that are on this giant wall. And she's like, basically what this says is you're not Chinese until you've hiked to the top of the Great Wall of China. And what happened, because we as Americans made it to the top of the Great Wall of China, they saw us as being the same as them. And everyone was the same. So everyone was just we all accomplished the same goal, right? We all became Chinese at that point, and we were just, everyone was joyous that everyone made the same accomplishment. And it just sort of showed you, to Nicolette's point, how sometimes small you are in the world, not less the universe, nonetheless the universe, but it's those moments that sort of change you and have you look at the world in a very different way. To me, that's healing. And that's,
So what I will tell you, so I'm not going to try to confuse too many things in here. That would look like transformational travel, which is a whole other thing, but that's a beautiful part of it.
You took it to a whole new level, right?
Sorry.
Yeah. No, but it's amazing. And it's, healing can be involved in transformational travel as well. Right. Uh-huh. But you had that chance to explore a culture in a way where you became one. Uh-huh. Right. And they saw you differently and you saw them differently.
Yep.
And it does change you. And I think part of it is also, I'm sure you're able to take that back and bring it into your own world. Right. So there's a beautiful level of inclusion that happens with travel too.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, I just got this scene from Rocky IV at the end with where everybody is cheering for Rocky and Rocky does that speech about if you can change and I can change and we can change.
Yeah. I wish I would have thought about that at the time. I would have started doing it.
Went there.
You were the Rocky.
And I'm going to go to my other thing, and I'm sorry, but because my other thing is floating in the ocean. Like, I feel like that is one of the most healing things, and just being alone with your thoughts, floating in the ocean with nothing around you,
Actually, you know what, Brian? So there is something called a flotation tank.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're going to talk to someone about that next week, actually. Yes.
It is similar to that in a safe environment where sometimes you get meditative music, the lights are dimmed, you've got candles, and you have that time with your thoughts, being able to float and be in water. And it's a beautiful healing modality.
Yeah. See, and I sort of think of it this way. I sort of feel, and I'm sorry now, you're giving me therapy right here. But I feel like I'm giving myself away to the universe, right? If a shark comes along and eats me, well, I guess that's going to happen. I'm out there floating in the ocean, but I'm alone with my thoughts and whatever sort of wherever I flow to in that time, before, is what it is. So.
What's really sad is that I grew up not having that crazy vacation you identified first, right? Where you're on a time schedule, you have to accomplish all these things.
Yeah.
And I spent most of my life having travel like that, so even if, and it was very, we're going to go to this island and this Caribbean island and on this cruise and, and everything was very tropical and it was great. It was great. I was a kid, but it was you were always punching a clock, right? You had to accomplish all of these things and you had to get to this water park and that water slide. And, and it was very rigid and structured. And I found myself as an adult kind of trying to implement the same thing. And, my other half was why do we have to do all these things? This is supposed to be a vacation, right? And I was like, well, we just have to. We're here. We have to do all the things. And, it wasn't until I started planning trips that I didn't have a lot of things, or just like, let's just stay in one place for this amount of time so we don't feel compelled to have to do everything in one, day or 2 days. And it changed things, and it kind of gets you away from that, like feeling like you need a vacation from your vacation, and actually look, enjoying anything with small children is probably difficult, right? And even when I took that trip,
Yeah.
that trip to DC, it poured the entire weekend, right? It poured. It was just so rainy. We couldn't go in anywhere. My 4-year-old at the time was like, what are we doing here? But like when I took him in the rain and I stood in front of that White House, right? And I was like it opened up this possibility. And I looked at him and I said, Michael, you can live here one day, and I just like kind of just showing like that this is like, wow, look at this. Like we're part of this giant thing, this country and this government, and like possibilities are open. It just like, it felt like such a moment, in the rain with him whining, and, it just was a moment, so I wasn't in China, but I did have a moment, and it's very important. It was a very important one because it actually set off the journey that we're on now, and
I don't think it matters where you are. It's that moment you make that realization, but how much, so here's my question, right? You're talking about wellness. How much does meditation play into, and I know we're talking about all types of travel, and I'm sorry, but how much does meditation play into that wellness, the sort of the wellness travel, right? That sort of healing travel.
I don't think meditation is mandatory,
Okay.
but I know that it is going to be present almost everywhere in healing modalities, because it is an important practice to learn. If anything, breathing exercises become something that you learn, because that helps to lower your heart rate, and therefore calm your mind.
Mm-hmm.
So even sometimes that bit of simplicity is a big piece. For me, meditation has been active for about 10 to 13 years. And that was, again, it was out of necessity at that point to calm my own anxiety.
Uh-huh.
And I still use it for that. But there's also, we now practice transcendental meditation in our home.
Mm-hmm.
I learned it, then my husband, then our tween daughter. So all three of us meditate here. And there's a piece that actually clears your mind in a space that allows for accelerated brilliance and creativity.
Because the reason why I ask is going back to Nicolette, like it doesn't, what you were saying with Washington, it almost doesn't matter where you are. It's that sense that if you're calm and you're sort of taking it in and absorbing the things around you, it's sort of, that's to me, that's when you realize those things. Do you know what I mean? You realize those bigger things, those things that are bigger than yourself. If you're stuck in that, boom, I'm going here, I'm going there, I'm going there. Like you don't have that moment. You don't have that second to stop and think and realize stuff.
Yes, absolutely. And meditation is a huge tool and gift in order to be able to do that.
Now, what about now, though, right? We're in the middle of this pandemic, and I'm sure people are like, well, I would love to do something like this, but, can't travel or don't want to travel or whatever it might be. And what would you say to that right now? Are there some things that you can do during this time?
Oh, absolutely. So for me, travel has changed, but hasn't fully stopped. Being somebody that's been in the industry for so long, I recognize the efforts that are being put in and the new protocols that are in place. Just recently, the COVID testing requirement in order to come back into the States was added. And within 24 to 48 hours, hotels globally were saying, we can do it for you here. Luxury wellness properties. Everybody was making sure that it can be done. So all of this, is really taking place in terms of safety. So it is based on your comfort zone. If you are comfortable going somewhere locally, then even a change of scenery can be huge. So as we look at the wellness trends for 2021, actually one of them is travel to reset. And I love that. And it's really seeing all types of travel that's being good for your wellness and your mental wellness. That change of scenery, what we've seen is leaving these four walls makes a big difference. In addition, there are amazing companies like Healing Hotels of the World and like Pravasa, who is a wellness tour operator, both have created virtual healing opportunities. So Healing has done healing at home. That's based a bit more on a schedule. Pravasa has an ongoing virtual healing that you can invest in and do on your own. And they'll teach you how to set up your house, how to set up the right room and the space to dedicate to you, and make sure that you're actually scheduling it and setting aside days like you would a vacation. You're sent recipes, or you can do something the next level and have the food sent to you along with a gift bag. And I experienced those in the summer. And I'm going to do another one actually in a few weeks with Pravasa, because they are, it's so beautiful. And I was amazed at how I could be, mind you, I'm in a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment. There's no privacy. And on a Saturday and Sunday, I'm using this tiny bit of space in our bedroom to be by myself and use and do this experience with Pravasa. And I felt a world of difference from when I had started. So travel is available in those ways to be guided. And then there's also simple things that you can do for yourself. Digital detoxing is a constant. It's such a gift. We are so connected to our phones, to social media, to scrolling, to games even. I'm always surprised. Sometimes I'll put a game on my phone and I'm like, why do I can't get out of it? And, I delete the app actually every day. I'm like, no, I won't do it today.
Then you reinstall it, then you delete it.
Yes. But one thing that I try to do is every single weekend, one day during the weekend, I do a digital detox. So I put my phone on do not disturb. I put it in another room. It doesn't exist until the next day. And, a full digital detox would be great, of like no Netflix, no any of that. And I do on those days, I'm more active in reading as well, but I'm not going to lie, I'm going to put my Netflix on.
Because I believe everyone needs alone time. However you want to have that, right? How important is in that healing process the alone time versus some of these, how we talked about these group things in healing where you have these other group practices in healing? What's not that there should be a formula and a split, but how important is the alone versus the group pieces in healing travel?
I would say that is personal.
Okay.
Right. And it's about a balance. So if you are somebody that joins a retreat, right, and is going with a group, typically what you'll find is that there's always going to be alone time scheduled.
Okay.
Because you need that time for reflection and to sit with your thoughts and potentially journal. There's also the opportunity to do a solo trip. And I think that's something that people are not as likely to do, especially if you're in a relationship, if you have a family, you're always thinking about everybody around you. But a trip to yourself for healing is so incredible. And one of the things that is really beneficial in your healing journey with travel, which I know that you both felt in China and DC, is changing spaces. Because when you get out of your own space, you're getting out of your own way a little bit. And it opens up that possibility.
All right. I want to bring up this concept because it actually reminds me of something Brian and I were talking about the other day. Work travel, business travel, right? So Brian, how many times have people thought you were going on vacation when you were traveling for work?
I used to hate it. Like, cause I used to travel a lot for work. And when people would be like, oh man, you're going on vacation again. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like sitting in a hotel room for 12 hours to go to a conference room to, and people just go, yeah, you're like, yeah. That is not relaxing whatsoever. There was one time where I flew from New York to I think it was Salt Lake City, which is like whatever, a 6-hour flight. went for a meeting for like, we went to lunch, went to a meeting, basically went back to the airport, and then was home. I left at 7 a.m. and I was home the next morning by 7 a.m. Like, those are the type of travels I had. That is exhausting.
It's really exhausting. I used to travel 80% of the time for business.
Yeah.
So I hear you.
You've written about the intersection, right, between wellness travel and business travel. What does that mean? Is there even, like, how does that even work?
So part of it is really being intentional in your business travel, because we get really stuck. I mean, and employers don't always make it easy. But we get really stuck in what this looks like or what it's supposed to look like. So we're on this constant grind. Wellness on the road for business travel can be really simple. So it can be as awesome and decadent as scheduling a massage upon arrival, which I love everything about that. That's such a beautiful way to kind of start your trip. Another piece that is important is just for your kind of overall well-being is to make sure that you do one thing every business trip that's just for you. One thing. And maybe, because if you think about it, right, we go to see all these cities and we see nothing except for conference rooms and hotels.
Or you drive by a monument, or something, you're like, oh, look at that. Okay. So, yeah. And you're like, it's like, what is it? Oh my God. And there's Big Ben, and there's Big Ben, and there's Big Ben. You're going around the traffic circle. Yeah.
Exactly. But making sure that you spend some time, and maybe you're going in, a day early, or the few hours early, whatever that is, to get this time. Or if you've got a friend there, you go and grab the coffee with a friend that's from out of state. Something that just feeds your soul is a big piece of that. There's also looking at potentially the food, right? If the food is going to be important to you, figuring out the place that you're staying and making sure that you have the options that you want. If they don't have that, if we're all at conferences, we know how that goes, then, prepping and bringing some of those things or stopping somewhere on the way, trying new places. Maybe you're going for a walk in the morning. I know that one of my trips to DC, I stayed in an area that let me walk closer to the Lincoln Memorial. So I did my morning walk so that I could see things and tour a little bit. So trying to incorporate some of those things. And then for me, I love yoga. I travel with my mat, and I can fit a yoga mat anywhere in the smallest hotel room. I traveled to New York all the time and stayed in small hotel rooms, so I could fit a yoga mat anywhere. But I was able to do my practice and bring that everywhere I went. And then lastly, I would say on the meditation piece, if you're not somebody that regularly meditates and you like the guided meditation apps, which I actually still really love, I use Insight Timer in particular, but I would make sure that every morning and every night on the road, I meditated. So before I went out and I was doing sales calls and, going for 15-hour days of smiling, I meditated first thing in the morning before I left, and always before I went to sleep. And I actually still meditate every night to sleep, and it helps me.
Me too. Definitely helps.
That's awesome. That's funny. Smiling. Well, let's close with this. Do you have any other suggestions for, for people who don't quite understand the concept of wellness travel, or something that they can do right now to get started and kind of learn more about it, or, a trip, maybe something that they can plan right now?
Right. Or how do they work with you to actually form a trip, right? Because I would be like, where would I go for wellness?
Right. I don't even.
I would just go to some random place and be like, wait, what? I'm next to the airport.
I don't feel well.
100%. Well, what I'll tell you is that I have huge trust and faith in travel advisors, because they're 100% of what they do is researching everything about travel. They know the ins and outs. They know the regulations. And especially, well, even more highlighted now, it's really helpful to have that kind of support, so you're not stressing. That takes the stress away. So that's kind of my number one suggestion. But also, I would recommend people to join my Travel Can Heal movement. So if they go to my website, which is inspiredjourneyconsulting.com/travel can heal. When you sign that, you're joining a community. So if you're looking to begin your healing journey or just have it supported,
Mhm.
that's where you go. I send out information. I have suppliers, so resorts, tour operators, travel advisors, people that provide this information, and that is sent to the people in this community. And then there's also hashtags on Instagram and Twitter around that, so that you're constantly getting the information that you need that you didn't realize was out there to support you.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing this with us. This was a lot of fun. I knew this was going to be a fun one, right, Brian?
Yeah, I'm sorry I derailed it with like 80 million types of
No,
travel right there
yeah.
at the front.
No, I love it. It's amazing.
I have Rocky going on, Brian, so it's all good.
I know.
Well, thank you again, and we look forward to sharing this with everybody, and we'll include some links for the viewers so that you guys can check everything out that Jackie's got going on.
Amazing. Thank you.